That's right. You heard the man. You can't win without beef up front. Goes across professional ranks and to the college game. You want to win, you got to have beef up front. Look at the Birds against the Dolphins. Now everyone wants the band to play. It's just, you can't win without beef up front. Good evening. Of course, another edition, as I said, beef up front here, talking all things college football. I am Sean Brace, joined as always by the man who is dialed in on the game, all things college football, with Ryan Coyle. Be sure to follow him at Ryan Coyle 35. And a good evening, Ryan. You ready to go for another interesting slate of college football? Again, we're just, each week has its own big game. Last week, of course, featured Penn State getting stomped. This week, I think there's two that we can focus on, but probably the next big one on everybody's card, Alabama, LSU.
Yeah, I mean, over the next few weeks, like you said, we're going to have one big game, it seems like, each and every week. I think this week is maybe the most disappointing slate like that we've seen from the past few weeks, because we talked about it last week, how we've been spoiled with so many good games. This week is a little bit underwhelming, but still major playoff implications on the line, and that's the beauty of college football. Each and every game means the world. I mean, we've seen the 49ers in the NFL lose 2 games in a row. They could go and win out the rest of the way, and no one will remember those 2 losses if they get that 1 seed. That's what that's all about. But college football, 1 loss can completely derail your season. So each and every week matters, and that's the beauty of the sport.
Damn right. All right. Well, before we talk a little bit about what's taking place this week on the card, including games happening on Friday, Mike, I'm wondering where you're at with this whole Michigan sign stealing story. Now, I don't think we know all the details, and I'm refraining to really giving the full opinion at that point in time, until we get out all the details. But they're investigating, and I'm just curious: is this a big deal to you? Has anything caught your attention? Are you even remotely interested in this? A big picture, does it have an effect on this team? Does it motivate them? All that. Over to you. What do you say to the whole Michigan sign stealing situation?
So to start, I think it's kind of weird that it comes out this week while Michigan's on a bye. They don't have a game this week. So, I mean, that could have been a big distraction. It sounds like there's been people in Ann Arbor all week trying to get to the bottom of this. I'm also with you, though. I don't really like to speculate until we get all the information, all the details come out. But I also am in the corner of when there's smoke, there's typically fire as well. So it seems like one of those things where something definitely shady's been going on, something that might be against the rules, but I don't think it's something that, unless it becomes too big of a distraction, will affect Michigan this year. I think this is something that we'll see happen down the line. I mean, we see things in college basketball all the time with recruiting violations and whatnot. Those penalties typically don't come in for several years with how slow and how poor the NCAA is ran. I don't think this will be something that happens, and it's also one of those situations where if Jim Harbaugh is able to just get through this, win the national title, he could be off to the NFL next year and not have to worry about it at all. So I think it's one of those things down the line. It might affect Michigan more in the long run, kind of in hurt the program down the road. And Jim Harbaugh might be able to escape it. And this team in its own, that's another stupid thing about college sports. I feel like it's usually the kids and the new coaching staff down the line usually pay the punishment for the previous regime and the previous players. So that's really all I have to say on it. And just kind of wait until we get some more news to come out to really give a bigger opinion on the situation.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of kicking the tires on interesting angles, and they're connecting the dots. And again, for me, it doesn't really have an effect on the field at this point in time. So I got no interest in getting into any of the dirty stuff from Michigan's side. I do think that they are a national championship contender. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that I would say I'd have anybody higher than them. Like, I know it's going to work itself out. But with the game coming up against Ohio State, but I just think that at the end of the day, and Penn State, I just think that Michigan is a championship caliber ball club, and they keep it simple. Harbaugh's been there before. The success that they've had the last 2 seasons, so I don't think anybody would disagree with that, and I don't think it's going to have an effect too much. It might actually motivate them, right? I find that these things do motivate some of the better teams out there, and I think Michigan is that.
Yeah, because now it's also one of those things where if it's true or not, it's one of those things where Michigan, it's us against the world is pretty much what they're preaching. No one wants to see us win anymore. with the allegations, true or not,
Yep.
and everyone's going to be going against us. So that could be one of those things, but also, the more media, more investigators in there, it gets in the way of things at times, and the distractions off the field could cause a problem. So it's kind of one of those things we're just gonna have to wait and see down the line. I wish they were playing like an inferior opponent this week, like a Purdue or something, and see if Purdue was able to keep it within like 10 points or something, and see really if it is having an effect on them.
Well, as always, it feels like Dion gets it right. And I thought his take was great a little earlier this week. He's like, man, you can get the game plan. You can mail it to me. I still got to stop it. So, I think that there's some truth in that. But cheating's cheating. Don't get caught, right? That's all I could say about that. All right, moving on. Let's get to the games. Look, I know I hit the fast forward button and talking a little bit about Alabama and LSU. It's just interesting because the SEC is a complete mess right now. And I feel like a lot of these other conferences are going to just work itself out. Maybe the SEC does at the end of the day, but kind of feeling like we're going to have anarchy at the end of the season. I hope that's the case. But
that's the fun of it.
Yeah, right. But to the Pac-12, I think it's going to, as always, it works itself out. This game, Purdue, not Purdue, exactly. Oregon, and what they have going on against Utah this weekend, it is a do or die game. And if one team loses, they're out of the playoff picture. The Pac-12, of course, takes a hit. Still a couple games left to go. But this is one of those type games that, hey, man, you want to make a season, you win this game. It's being played in Utah. As I just said, both teams playing for a little something bigger this year. 6-1 on the season, 3-1 both in the Pac-12, identical records. The losses on their records so far, Utah 21-7 lost to Oregon State. They were 19th ranked. Beavers at that point in time on September 29th. And the Ducks lost, of course, that great game to Washington 2 weeks ago, I believe, number 7 Washington, and 36-33. So to this game going off on a Saturday, once again, DraftKings Sportsbook is where we're getting our odds from, and it is a 3:30 kickoff. Gotta love that. 6 ABC, I believe we'll have the call as always here in Philly, and it is a 6-point spread. Oregon favorite here on the road in Utah, 47.5. Ryan Coyle, it's always, the statement is don't bet against Utah at home. They're catching 6, money line plus 185. For the dogs at home, Utah minus 225. Oregon, where do you stand in this game?
Yeah, so I actually got Utah earlier in the week at +7. I think this is a really good spot for them at home. And I got them at plus 210 on the money line as well. I think that they're going to win this game outright. Like you were saying, they've won their last 16 games at home. And two of their last 3 matchups against Oregon, they won those games. They've held Oregon in those last 3 games to 37 total points. I know that there's a new regime in there and everything from the third game ago. But this is a team that was able to slow down Oregon last year, holding them to just 12.3 points per game in their last 3 matchups. So this is an Oregon offense that comes into the game averaging 47 points. This is one of the more elite offenses in the country, but Kyle Whittingham has just shown the ability to slow down teams. I mean, he kept a USC team that routinely puts up 40 points, under 40 last week. Like I said, winning 16 games at home, they have one of the better home field advantages. I am a little bit disappointed, though, that this is a 3:30 kickoff. This is like 12:30 out there. This is like this should be like the night game, the 8 o'clock game, and that's when Utah is really tough at home. I know they've won 16 in a row, but that's where usually they kind of impose their will on some teams in those night games. But I think this is a really good spot for them. I'm a huge believer in Oregon. I had them winning that Washington game a few weeks ago. I love the balance that they bring to the table, but it's just time to put Kyle Whittingham up there with the likes of Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, Nick Saban. I mean, with the resources that he has at a program like Utah, and just finds a way to win double-digit games every year and knock off some of these more so finesse teams, I guess you could say. It's just an impressive feat. So I think Utah is going to pull this one off at home. If you don't want to sprinkle on the money line, I definitely like that +7. This isn't a Utah team that gets blown out. They found a way to go and overcome some obstacles last week at USC and come back late and win that game. I just think this is a team too good at home to bet against them. So I really like them with the +7 there, even if you're getting at +6 now.
All right, boom. We're already off and running with a dog that bites. I like the sound of that. Again, as you pointed out, 3:30. All right, staying with the 3:30 card here. This game, being played in Jacksonville, as always, the world's largest cocktail party, as they say. You got Georgia and you got Florida. And of course, two different types of teams here. One team is on a 24-game winning streak. Of course, that is Georgia, 7-0 on the season. Florida, not too bad. Like, we remember that loss, speaking of Utah, to open up the season, where they weren't. They lacked a lot in that game. Got actually smashed. 5-2 though here, 4-0 at home. As I said, game being played in Jacksonville. Perfect record on the other side with Georgia. Graham Mertz making his 40th career start in college football. He's going to be steady in the boat. Big number on DraftKings Sportsbook. 14.5 is your total. Opened up at 49.5. Now down to only a tick as well at 48.5. Anything on this one for you, Ryan?
Yeah, so I wore my Florida Gator shirt for this game. I like them to cover that plus 14.5 in this one. I fell into the trap, which makes me a little bit worried, a few weeks ago when they played Kentucky, and then Kentucky got absolutely rolled. But when you look at this Florida team and Graham Mertz, the thing about him when he was at Wisconsin, he was like a turnover prone guy. He only has 2 interceptions on the year, and Georgia's only forced 9 turnovers this year. The past few years, they've been a much more opportunistic defense. They're like 75th in the country right now at forcing turnovers. So Florida's a team that when you look at teams that could potentially pull off an upset or as a big underdog, you look at, all right, does this team turn the ball over a lot? Are they playing a team that's going to force some turnovers and take possessions away? Florida doesn't really turn the football over, and Georgia isn't a team that turns you over. So if they're going to go possession for possession, and Florida has shown the ability to run the ball in some teams this year, I think they're going to be able to hang around in this one. Georgia has won the past 2 games in the series by an average of 24.5 points. So this is a team that's been dominating the past few years. But when you look historically, like Georgia, one of these teams hasn't really ran away with the rivalry. So this is a huge game. I think it was on video on Tuesday. People were already moving their tailgating RVs into the Jacksonville parking lot. So this is one of the biggest games each and every year in college football. And I do really like Florida there at the plus 14.5. I think if they just take care of the football, they're going to be able to hang around. They've shown the ability to put up some points. And I don't think that they're really going to be that scared of this Georgia team that hasn't really looked exactly like world beaters like we've seen in the past few seasons. So this is one I'm really looking at Florida plus 14.5. It also opened at plus 20. It opened at 20.5. So we're all the way down to 14.5 now. I think that says something about Florida, plus like 500 on the money line. This is a game where I know I like to come on here and call some upset alerts, but I think we're due for one of these top teams. We saw UNC last week go down, but one of these top teams, whether it's an Ohio State, whether it's a Georgia, Michigan, one of these top teams in that top 5 is going to fall at some point and really cause some chaos. And I'm looking at this as a potential spot, not guaranteeing it, not as confident as I was in that Duke Clemson game at the beginning of the year, but this was one I do like that 14.5 for the Gators.
All right. Well, to open up beef up front with this episode here, 2 dogs straight off the jump with some serious bite. I mean, we're taking Utah at home outright, and we're riding with the Gators against Georgia. Again, Brock Bowers, big time loss at that point, or with him, but still a team that has found ways to blow other teams out and win games. As I said, 24-game win streak. So as far as that game,
one thing I'd like to add too with that, if you don't like the 14.5 full game, I do like the first half spread. Georgia's been a team that has really done well after halftime, making halftime adjustments, and they're coming into this game. This is the first game without Bowers as he got injured in that Vanderbilt game. They had their bye last week. So this is a team I think is going to have to be making some adjustments on the fly. If Florida's able to come out hot, maybe get the ball first, go down and score. This is a Georgia team that might be reeling a little bit. So I think I got it at plus 7.5 in the first half as well earlier in the week. That's a play I like in this game too.
Excellent. All right, Ryan, let's keep it moving, but staying in the SEC. Really intrigued about this when Julian Edler from DraftKings Sportsbook joined me on the Daily Tickler earlier this week and said he liked Kentucky catching points against Tennessee. This game is going off at 7 p.m. Kentucky 3.5-point dogs at home. Both teams 5-2 on the season. Both teams 4-3 ATS. Both teams 5-2 in their last 10. Identical across the board. As I said, Kentucky at home catching points. Any thoughts on this one, Ryan?
Yeah, I feel like I'm beating the same drum, but I do like Kentucky in this one too. Plus the 3.5. That's one of the plays that I've been most profitable on this year is those home dogs. Being able to have those situations, that's something I take a lot, especially on the money line too. Like I hit a pretty nice play a few weeks ago with Oklahoma State as a home dog against Kansas. I got them at, I believe it was plus 185. That was a winner there. This is a Kentucky team that is coming off some rest as well, and they're playing a Tennessee team that was up at halftime at Alabama 20-7. Alabama comes back to cover that 9.5 point spread in that game. Like that has to be such a deflating loss for Tennessee. Now you have to go on the road to another SEC team. I just think that the arrow is kind of pointing down for Tennessee right now. And this is a potential get right spot back at home for Kentucky. Start building some juice back up to compete down the line to get to that double digit win mark, which is Kentucky's kind of goal after these past few seasons. And another thing that I like about Kentucky in this matchup, Florida showed the ability at the beginning of the year to run all over this Tennessee defense and really kind of impose their will in the running game. Kentucky was able to do the exact same thing earlier in the year to Florida. This is a team that had over 300 rushing yards in that game. If they're able to kind of implement that same game plan against Tennessee, control the clock, this is a game that I think Kentucky can pull off the upset at home. So there we are, 3 straight games to start it, and I like the underdogs. But if you're giving me home points to the home team as a dog in this one, that's a spot I take 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, it's tough to pass up, and especially what we've seen so far. You just listed a couple of games, and always love catching points at home. Team gets, a little bit more motivation playing in front of their crowd, and crazier stuff happens, meaning refs like to give you some calls from time to time. So, with the hometown cooking. All right, let's keep it moving. And next one I want to get to, we definitely got to mention Ohio State because like I hate to say it, but man, they've been pretty impressive, and I don't think they're getting the credit because I think a lot of us expect, the Michigan's going to knock them off, and I don't know what happens if that doesn't happen. Ohio State runs the damn table here. Anyways, they're 14.5-point dogs are favorites on the road at Wisconsin, 7:30 p.m. Does this buck the trend? Is this a place that you would say it's either taking the favorite Buckeyes on the road or pass, or where are you at in this one?
Yeah, this is one I'm actually going to take the Buckeyes to cover on the road. They've won 9 straight at or against Wisconsin, and they own an average margin of victory during that span of 18.3 points per game. So when I think of Wisconsin, historically, I think of a team that keeps it close, but they have not been able to do that at all against Ohio State. Just because of Wisconsin's style of play, they typically, as we've seen over the years, just a team that likes to play defense around the football. And with that, you think close games, but Ohio State has really outmatched them. And they're a battle, they're a battle-tested team. And that's why I think going forward, they have the chance to knock off Michigan just because they had that tough game against Penn State last week where one of the uglier games, we didn't even touch on that. And then the Notre Dame game as well. That's 2 big-time victories that Michigan, by that time in the season, the only tough game that they're going to have played is the Penn State game. So it's an Ohio State team that I do think has the chance to knock them off going forward. But Ohio State, like I said, they've dominated this rivalry against Wisconsin. I think that their defense is really eye-popping. Like that is something that's really stuck out to me. Completely shut down Penn State last week, held them to 0-15 on 3rd down until that final drive when they finally converted one. But I just don't think without their quarterback, with Tanner Mordecai still out, I think Wisconsin's going to struggle to move the football unless Braylon Allen's able to break a few big runs. But that Ohio State defense held the Penn State backfield to a pretty slow day last week as well. So this is a spot where I'm actually not going to take the points with the home team, and I will lay them with Ohio State.
I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at that under 45.5. That's got my attention.
Yeah, I got it actually at 43.5 earlier in the week. I think this is like a 27-10 type game. I just don't really think Wisconsin's going to be able to move the ball. I think for once, the Ohio State defense is the unit that's carrying this team.
I agree. All right. That's an interesting game that I probably will take a flyer on as far as the under is concerned. Once again, 7:30 p.m. DraftKings Sportsbook, 14.5 for the Buckeyes, 45.5 is your total in that one. All right, let's get to one more here. And I'm really curious because, again, they're not in the top 5, but they're one of those top dogs. They're undefeated, perfect 7-0 on the season, just skating by. Of course, I'm talking about Oklahoma. And is this the week that they finally get knocked off? Kansas, pretty good squad at home, catching 9, noon kickoff. Maybe you catch Oregon or Oklahoma for the picking as it's a little early start out there. 65 is your total on that one. Ryan Coyle, are we going to see anything close to an upset +9, or are you going with the favorite Oklahoma Sooners on the road?
Yeah, so it's another one where we've had some line movement earlier in the week. It was 10.5. But a note on this matchup, Oklahoma has not lost to Kansas since October 4th of 1997. I wasn't even born yet, and the Sooners are riding an 18-game winning streak in this rivalry. So this is a domination across the board from Oklahoma. This year, it's certainly a little different. This Kansas is a program on the rise. This is a game I do like the points in. I like a lot of points. I think we see a shootout in this one. And Oklahoma was playing with their food a little bit last week, narrowly escaped a bad UCF team at home. So this is a spot that Oklahoma should be on upset alert. I will take Kansas with the points. Like I said, I had them earlier. We get 10.5. I think that they'll keep this probably under a touchdown. But I do think Oklahoma will still win the game outright. But I think that these two teams kind of go back and forth, and it's an exciting way to kick off the noon slate.
All right, couple rapid fire. You ready to go?
Yep.
And then we'll get all your plays that we haven't hit. But Florida State, your squad, ACC, nothing to worry about against Wake Forest, right? 20.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook, noon kickoff, 52 total.
Yeah, in that game I took the over with Florida State. Another team where with like Georgia, I kind of said at the beginning, start slow a little bit but by halftime they kind of find out maybe where some of those mismatches are that they're able to take advantage of. And we saw it against Duke. We saw it a few weeks ago against Syracuse. This is a team that performs better in the second half. So I do like Florida State again this week.
Talk to me about the Irish. They're taking on Pitt, 20.5-point favorites, 330 kick, 45s total. I know we haven't really focused on Notre Dame, but Sam Hartman's still a damn good quarterback, 20.5. Anything in this game?
It's not one that's on my card. I don't have that one written down, but 20.5, that's a big number, even against a Pitt team that's struggling this year. Is that game at Notre Dame or at Pitt?
That game is at Notre Dame, South Bend.
That's still a pretty big number. I think I would actually lean for Pitt in that one plus 20.5. I just don't really know at this stage of the game if Notre Dame's a team that's going to be dominating like that. Like they really caught USC off guard last a few weeks ago, but I will probably, if you had to make me take a pick in that one, take Pitt plus 20.5.
All right, 30 seconds on each and 2 games left here. And I just had the one that I wanted to get your take on because I know that there's some backstory between these two teams and, of course, with you. And now I'm just losing. Oh, there it is. Air Force at Colorado State. Air Force could be a wagon, as they say. 2 touchdown favorite, 46.5. Push last week versus Navy. Anything on this one?
I would probably take the under in that one. We talked about it last week with Air Force's rushing game, the number one rushing offense in the country, and then the number one defense in the country as well. They showed last week, I said if they're able to stifle the run game of Navy, that they're not going to be able to move the ball on them. I think it's kind of the same thing in this one. Keep that offense on the field, run the clock, and let's let our defense do the work when they're out there as well. So I like the over in that, or excuse me, the under in that game.
And that was a tough push, the way that game ended last week. Very unfortunate for the Air Force backers. Final game, 30 seconds on the clock. A little bit of a late one here. Yeah, the latest game on the card, Oregon State and Arizona. Anything for you in this one? This is also a big game. Oregon State 3-point favorites. Game being played in Arizona. 57.5 is your total.
That's one I do like Arizona in. Like that's a weird line. Arizona, I believe, is only 4-3 on the season, but they've played teams tough and certainly a program with the arrow headed up. But that's still one where Oregon State, number 11 in the country, you'd think they'd be like a touchdown favorite in that game. So that's one that the line's telling me that Arizona has a shot, not just to cover the spread in that one, but to pull off the potential outright upset. That could be another one of those kind of you throw a wrench in the Pac-12 where we didn't see this one coming, and that's something that you might wake up to on Sunday morning and be like, wow, Arizona actually pulled off that upset. So I am looking at that one at 3. I got it at 3.5 earlier in the week.
Excellent. All right. Any final plays that we did not hit that you would like to put out there for the listening audience?
I will actually be at the Penn State game, my first ever Penn State game. So I took the Penn State team total over of 38.5. I think Franklin's going to try and get the sour taste out of their mouth from last week's performance and really try and run up the scoreboard in this one. I think they're a 31.5-point favorite as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see them cover that number. This is, if Franklin has a chance, he's going to try and win this one like 49-0.
That's a good call. Well, enjoy that, man. Happy Valley. First time. beef coming to
Oh,
Happy Valley.
beef
Love
in
it,
the
dude.
house. Need the winning play
beefing.
up there.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody enjoy the games. Good luck on all your plays. As always, make sure you follow Ryan at Ryan Coyle 35. Beef Up Front is the podcast. Catch us weekly right here on The Gambler.